All right. Good morning, everybody. Let's see who's got it. Who's got it? Fish and Golf got first blood. Rock and roll. Man, Larry and Trish. Good morning, Liberty Girl. Good morning. All right, here we go. I'm gonna try to talk about people talking about stuff. Let's see how this goes. Good morning. Good morning. So, without naming names, I see a few people in the chat that well, basically, good morning, Your Majesty. We're gonna end up talking a little bit about the stolen valor thing this morning as well, probably. But looking at the chat, I see Uncle Steve and I see Liberty Girl. Man, we get Bill pulled in here, and then we got to start working on Mom's siblings. And I think the show will be just right. So, uh, here's the story. There was a show last night. It was highly anticipated and it was highly successful despite some hiccups. Donald Trump and Elon Musk did an X space, which the X spaces is it's not my favorite format, but it's not bad. Uh, I had audio only on it for my time listening to it. I did listen to the whole thing. In fact, I sat down to listen to it at 8 o'clock, and they started a half hour late. Now, this was not a here we're going to pull the power move and be late because we can. It wasn't the Obama thing that I found so obnoxious. No, X actually suffered a DDoS attack, and looks like that was very intentional. So we'll talk a little bit about who the prime suspects are. Kamala Harris, the Great Britain. But switch this code. Here we go. So basically, what happened was this: Musk's interview with Trump marred by technical glitches. They started a half hour late because hackers tried to shut it down. So a DDoS attack, DDoS is distributed denial of service, which basically what it is a hacker, a nerd with a bunch of computers. Anyway, uh, attacks a network by accessing it a lot, by creating at least the function of access so that the servers are overwhelmed by the number of system requests being made, right? It doesn't have to log on, right, to shut down something like an X space or a YouTube show or a podcast, something like that. You don't even have to access it and stay logged on. So it's not like you have to have thousands of computers or even be able to simulate thousands of computers. All you have to do is create thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of requests, right? Log on, log on, log on, log on, log on, log on. So you write a program, you write a bot that goes on and attempts to access, attempts to log in. It doesn't even have to successfully log in. The fact that it makes the attempt is enough, because the computer that it's attempting to log into or to access or to make any request of, right? You know, mute, unmute. It doesn't matter. If you ask the computer to do enough things enough times, it will get bogged down. And the result was that the space didn't start on time. And when we say it didn't start on time, to be clear, they didn't start speaking on time. Right? At 8 o'clock, in fact, at like 7:58 was when I first went in and tried to access it. At 7:58, the space was there. It existed. Right? It looked, it looked something kind of like this. It's, if we had started, if this show was going to go live at 7:30, which we did, and you were staring at this, at just the opening screen, but you were hearing okay, in fairness, they had elevator music. It wasn't just quiet. But that's basically what happened is they started the show, and then because of the DDoS attack, nobody could get into the space. Nobody could access the show. And they got it sorted out and fixed it. So they once they got it fixed, the conversation, if I'm being honest, there were a few things that were notable about it and interesting. Overall, nothing that we didn't expect, nothing super earth-shattering and new, except that Donald Trump actually said he talked about something that he referred to as nuclear warming. They were talking a little bit about electric cars and alternative fuel sources and climate change, global warming, and they both seemed to be of more or less the same idea that global warming, climate change is a thing that should be considered, should be concerning, but it's not an immediate threat. Trump described it as the worry that the ocean will rise by 4 centimeters over the next 800 years, which just means more oceanfront property. It was a funny little quip. But then he started talking about nuclear warming, and they spent a good deal of time talking, and this was heartening, talking about how nuclear is probably the best option for renewable energy in the future. Currently, it looks like the direction that people are going, that the technology is going, is towards solar. Right? They're moving away from wind. Those that are developing technologies, they're moving away from wind and toward more sustainable solar. And Musk talked a bit about that. And of course, the problem with solar right now is solar panels are expensive enough and use up enough energy that they're a poor long-term solution in the current iteration, because by the time the solar panels have replaced the energy that it cost to install them to begin with, they're nearly exhausted. They're nearly at the end of their life cycle and need to be replaced. So they don't actually save on resources, on energy, on money in a substantial way yet, but they're probably a good long-term solution, assuming a lot of development. And that development, one of the things that development is going to have to include is durability and longevity. Right now, they just don't have the longevity to justify their installation in a meaningful way. Semi-related, however, I'm seriously considering installing solar where I am, just because we're out in the middle of nowhere, and it would be a good backup system. Plus, if I had solar installed, if I do, once I have solar installed out here, I'll be in a position where between the solar, the septic, and the well, I could just completely disconnect from the grid and say, sayonara, bitches. So that, you know, as a backup system, solar is obviously far preferable to any of the existing alternatives. Um, and in fact, in that context, it's even better than nuclear because it's safer. But only on that small scale context. In that small scale context, and this was part of the conversation last night, is that nuclear is actually safer. There are fewer accidents and casualties around nuclear than any other alternative fuel energy source currently. And that is a big deal. But there's also the concern, Trump pointed out, right now there are five nuclear powers. Sergeant Major says, I think solar panels cause global warming. When I was installing mine yesterday, I was very hot. Oh, so I take it that means they got you your new ones. That's awesome. But yeah. So DDoS attack. Let's talk about that for a minute. There are two primary suspects, in my opinion, for the DDoS attack. Now, I am not going to suggest that Kamala Harris is intelligent enough to conduct a DDoS attack, obviously. However, she definitely has enough money to hire somebody. Now, I am also not going to suggest that Kamala Harris is intelligent enough or crafty enough to have thought to hire somebody to conduct a DDoS attack. That's what her staffers are for. That's her staffers know that's something that they needed to do. And this is one of those things, kind of like the Lois Lerner thing. Kamala Harris did not tell anybody that she wanted them to conduct a DDoS attack. She rather made it clear, and has for basically her entire career, that she would be pleased by anything that happened to cause harm to her political opponent, whoever that may be at the time. And then Democrat operatives roll with it. Highlands Husky points out, yes, and I was about to get to that one. But the other likely culprit, the other suspect, of course, is the UK, is the British government. And if I'm being honest, hey, you've also got the Russian government, right? And you've got completely separate from state actors. You've got the whole Antifa, BLM, basically hackers for Harris, right? And I'm not suggesting that there is such an organization as Hackers for Harris. I'm suggesting that in the hacker community, in the hacker spaces, there are sociopaths, and sociopaths tend to vote Democrat. There are also in those spaces accelerationists who tend to vote Democrat, right? In fact, a really good way to think about wise choices that can be made in the space of political contexts is, imagine if you thought that the country was in such terrible shape that the only way to save it would be to let it crumble, to let it fall apart faster, so that you have a clean, blank foundation on which to build a new country. And then ask yourself, if that's the objective that you wanted to achieve, how would you vote? And the answer to that is overwhelmingly Democrat. If the thing you wanted to see was the country collapse so that you could rebuild it, you would vote Democrat. You would probably be the sort of person that would prefer the policies of a Republican, and you would vote Democrat in order to wipe out both parties by destroying the government under the weight of its own fraud, waste, and abuse. So when we think about that, the question of whether or not the Harris campaign would in fact do something of the sort. Well, let's see. Oh, wait. I may let my articles get out of order. Did Okay, this one is. Oh shit, that's the wrong article. Okay, I'll just explain. I'll just explain it then. Um, unburdened by what has been. Yeah. Um, if you doubt that the Harris campaign might be involved in doing something like a DDoS attack on Donald Trump, I mean, I know you don't, but I'm gonna make the case anyway. Joe Biden, through Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, oversaw the creation and introduction of the Disinformation Governance Board, what we so unaffectionately refer to as the American Ministry of Truth, just about 2 years ago. It lasted for a little less than a month before it had to be shut down due to immediate and dramatic public backlash. And I'm proud to say that here at the Brushfire Mind, we played at least some tiny role in that. I did several shows talking about the Ministry of Truth. I even at the time reread 1984 because it had been a couple of years at that point since I'd read it, and discussed that on the show. Those were some of our biggest shows that year, and in just about a month, and we weren't the only ones. Obviously, the Daily Wire was all over it. Steven Crowder's network was all over it. Tim Pool was all over. Every major talking head on our side of the fence, or even sitting on the fence, Timmy boy, jumped all over that shit just immediately. Whoa, 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 whoa. No, there's no Ministry of Truth in the United States of America. That's insane. So we shut that shit down. But they went that route. And then she picked this guy. She picked this guy Walls, who is a liar. I mean, that's it. He's a liar. This isn't some. I'm not going to rehash it. I'm not going to rehash it entirely because it's this simple. There are several videos out there from the other talking heads detailing the many times, several times, he has explicitly said, I carried weapons of war in war. I was at Bagram. Amusingly, he said I was at Bagram in Iraq, which is funny because I was at Bagram once in uniform fighting a fucking war. And if I recall correctly, that was in Afghanistan. I'm pretty sure of that because I know I've been to Bagram and I know I haven't been to Iraq. I spent time in Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Afghanistan. Never been to Iraq. Iraq is a little too metropolitan and well developed for my particular skill sets. I was a little too cowboy for Iraq. They sent me to Afghanistan. But this is who these people are. They're liars. They're censors. They're sociopaths. However, we also saw quite recently, as in just in the last couple of days, the British police, the police in Sergeant Major asks how. You know what? That's a great question. So that's it right there. If I could ask Tim Walls one fucking question, it would be, "Hey Timmy boy, how many lanes of traffic are in the Kandahar Death Star?" Eh? Eh? How many lanes of traffic in the Kandahar Death Star? Anyway, so the British the last couple of days have been talking about misinformation, disinformation. Oh, you're spreading hate. You're inciting racism. And threatening to extradite American citizens over posts we make on X. Many of us, myself included, have been making posts on X with the explicit intent of saying to those British authorities, "Come and get me, motherfucker." Jolly jolly tea and crumpets, sunshine. Bring your baton and see how that works. I can hit that target at 300 meters with iron sights. I've seen me do it. So there is that. That's a reasonable culprit to pin the DDoS attack on. And then, of course, there's the Russians. Now, I would actually go so far as to say the Russians maybe have the most to gain from Kamala Harris winning the White House. Because let's be real. Vladimir Putin wants to take command and control of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin wants to finish that war, end that war, and consume Ukraine and make it a part of Russia. Putin wants to rebuild the USSR, right? He can't do that with Donald Trump in the White House. Putin needs Kamala Harris to win this election because he knows that a President Kamala Harris is a weak president. In fact, she is likely the only thing available for the position that could be weaker than a Biden president. Timothy Squire says the USSR dissolved Russia from Ukraine. Russian Orthodox is to return to it. Sergeant Major says, careful, the Harris-Walz administration will work with the UK to extradite freedom fighters. And you know what? I've got enough highway in both directions. I can see a blue helmet from further away than I can hit it with a long gun, and that's a long fucking drive, my man. But Timothy's right. The USSR dissolved Russia from Ukraine, so the orthodoxy is to return it. Yes, that's my point, is Putin wants Ukraine back. Putin wants to rebuild the former Soviet Union, the USSR. And that's just not going to happen with Donald Trump in the White House saying, "Hey, I've got my big, beautiful red button. Try me." We know that's we know that's how it works, in fact, because we saw 4 years of Donald Trump. And one of the interesting things about the Trump presidency, about the Trump administration, is during that 4 years is the only time in nearly the last 40 that Russia, basically, it's the only time since Putin took office that Russia hasn't tried to reclaim, in fact, successfully reclaimed a piece of the former Soviet Union. Right? Once Putin took office, he started making moves. Right? Donbass, Crimea, etc. But not while Trump was in. Because Trump said, "I've got a button. Try me." And some of the criticisms that the Dems leveled at Trump were, oh, he's crazy, he's unpredictable. Speaking of somebody, by the way, Command Sergeant Major Walls, who has been in a war, I don't want you to know what I'm gonna do next. I definitely want to know what you're going to do next. In fact, knowing what you're going to do next in a war zone was kind of my thing. So yeah. So the unpredictable thing, wow, I'm getting hit hard right now from Twitch trying to sell me viewers. Let me clean some of those up real quick. Bear says Trump wasn't overseeing the buildup of NATO forces on Russian borders. JB was. Yeah, that is also a piece of the equation. And the other thing Trump was doing was making groups like NATO and the UN pay up because they hadn't been. Putin didn't move on Ukraine with Trump because Trump didn't make him. Correct. That was a big part of it. Guys, I've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again now. You should definitely go and watch the interview that I did with the retired KGB spy Jack Barsky, where he and I sat down and we talked about I interviewed him for 3 hours. I was only able to publish about half of it because we talked about he more than I, but we definitely scraped a few subjects that were not fair game for the publication. So I had to redact those, but for the most part, I was able to publish about half of it. I'm looking for it now. There it is. So here's the link for that. Go check that out. And this is a very interesting interview in the context of the conversation we're having right now, because in this interview, we did this a little over a year ago. So it was the Russia-Ukraine stuff was much more top of mind and in the news at the time that I sat down with Jack Barsky, who's well, I was about to say real name, but his birth name is Albrecht Dietrich. He's a German. He was a German citizen who was recruited by the KGB to conduct operations against the United States back in the late 70s. Basically, he's a contemporary of Putin. And the FBI caught him. The FBI, through counterintelligence operations, caught him. If I'm being honest, though, the FBI didn't really catch him so much as he fucked up and got himself caught. But they caught him, they flipped him, he became an American spy, American citizen, and went on to do great work for us, and then, of course, retired. I mean, he's 80-something now. Sergeant Major says, don't ever say top of mind. Okay. We can talk about that later, Dad. But it was something that people were thinking about at the time, and we talked about that, and he talked about Putin and the kind of guy that Putin is, and in a way, yeah, it was a very good conversation. So go check that out. And yeah, I think that's about all I've got this morning. No, it's not. Back to the Harris campaign and just the kind of people that these are. I wanted to share this with you. Dom Lucre shared this breaker of narratives. If you guys don't follow him on Twitter, he's or X, I guess. Sorry, he's actually quite good. Check him out. But he shared this video yesterday, before the X conversation with Elon and Trump.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay, so this is a journalist, right? Ostensibly, this is a reporter asking the White House press secretary, what is the White? Oh my God! Donald Trump is going to get to talk to people on a podcast, basically, with Elon Musk. By the way, guys, there were 1.2 million people listening to the X space with Trump and Musk last night. That's people listening on X itself, 1.2 million. At the same time, you've got Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, the Daily Wire, Steven Crowder, Alex Jones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You've got at least a few dozen other shows that were basically live streaming the podcast, and they're all getting 30, 40, 50, 100,000 here and there. So, you're talking at least 2 million people, I would guesstimate, or somewhere in that ballpark, 1.8 to 2.3, somewhere in that ballpark, million people watching this. So, in all fairness, the lefties should be concerned about the sheer number of people that Donald Trump got to speak to last night. Now, it is also fair, however, to say that the majority of us listening last night we've probably already made up our minds, right? But not all of us, not all of them. There were some people listening last night who made their decision last night, and they will push it over, and that's awesome. But here, we're looking at an effeminate black man who is ostensibly a journalist, asking if the White House is going to take measures to stop Donald Trump from speaking. Right? Forget the format. I don't care what the format is. He's asking the press secretary, you talk about something that exists because of the First Amendment, what the White House is prepared to do to interrupt Donald Trump's First Amendment right to speak. A right which I might add is given even more legal protection than, like, for example, me speaking into this microphone, talking to you guys this morning, because I'm not running for president. And political speech is, let's face it, political speech is essentially the reason for which the First Amendment is needed, right? You don't need free speech so that you can say good morning to people, right? You don't need free speech so that you can tell your wife that you like the dress she's wearing, right? You don't need free speech to order a cheeseburger at McDonald's. You need free speech so that you can argue with the government when it lies to you, right? When the British government tells you that there are no gangs of hostile foreign invaders committing mass rapes of British young girls, that 83% of rapes in the UK are committed by white men, and then you look at the numbers and you say, oh, wait a minute, I see what happened here. You've got gangs of Muslim terrorists raping one little white girl, and those 30 assailants get written down in the statistics as one rape. And that's how you manage to shift that number and fake it and tell that particular fucking lie. That's who this guy is. That's what people like this are about. We want to change your mind by filling it with poison.
And you've heard us talk about this many times from here, about the responsibilities that social media platforms have.
Right there. She belongs in jail for that sentence alone. Because, let me back it up. Listen to what she said.
Misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, no, and you've heard us talk about this many times from here, about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. Don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too.
Now, courts have found that the White House, specifically the Biden administration, were involved in basically, I hate this word, collusion with the social media companies. And really, it was coercion. Nice platform you got here. Shame if anything were to happen to it. But the reason I say she belongs in jail for that sentence alone is she did not answer with an immediate and full-throated denial. The only correct answer to the question, what is the White House going to do to stop Elon Musk and Donald Trump from speaking freely on the private platform owned by Elon Musk, is whoa. The White House isn't going to do shit because that would be illegal. That would be illegal in a major, major way. In fact, that would be a Section 242 violation of civil liberties under the color of law. That would be a Section 243 violation, conspiracy to commit suppression of civil liberties under color of law. That would be a direct interference, right? The civil liberties in question here, of course, freedom of speech and freedom of the press and freedom of assembly. Right? And let's not forget the unwritten but assumed from the nebulous penumbra of unenumerated rights. Thank you very much. The right to freedom of association, which is part of the freedom of assembly in legal theory. So a deep violation of the individual rights. And damn, I had another point to make on that just escaped me. But the fact is that anything other than the immediate full-throated, we're not going to do that. And then she goes on to say, I don't have anything prepared in front of me right now about what we are doing, but we have to be very careful because it's a private company. No, bitch, you don't have to be careful. You have to shut the fuck up and move on. You got nothing. Right, this isn't even, you can ask me for my ID, officer, but I don't have to give it to you unless I'm under arrest. Right, this isn't treading on thin ice. This is, well, hold on a minute. If you're doing anything to interfere, that's the other piece. So it's a violation of 242, deprivation of civil liberties, 243, conspiracy to commit, and it's direct campaign interference. It is election interference. Anything other than a full-throated denial right there is essentially a confession that we are intentionally engaged in interference in the 2024 election. Now, we already know that that's the case, right? There's no doubt about that. So if it's ever a question of did the Biden administration or the Harris campaign, were they involved in the DDoS attack? I can answer the question this way. If you would put it past them, then you've missed the last 2 years of illegitimate court cases and illegal election interference with Democrat governors and Democrat controlled state houses trying to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. Just bizarre. Like many of the cases against Donald Trump, like the E. Jean Carroll rape claim case, that bitch is weird. Like if you don't know about E. Jean Carroll and her cat vagina, and the fact that she can't remember when it happened, but she's sure it did happen, and it happened exactly the way they talked about it on that episode of Seinfeld, and the way that it happened in that episode of I almost said Boston Legal, not Boston Legal, fucking CSI, not CSI. Anyway, one of the crime shows had the same story, and it was even in the same department store, the Bergdorf Goodman, right? That bitch is weird. So you've got 2 years now of the Biden administration being actively involved in election interference and trying to shape the outcome of the 2024 election. So much so that you've got the press running cover the entire time. Okay, I'm starting to go a little bit off the original plan here, but you've got the press running cover the entire time, doing things like running this article in the New York Times saying Bernie Sanders urges Democrats to stay the course with Biden. Right? This is from what's the date on this one? From July 13th, 2024. Right? So Bernie urges Democrats to stay the course with Biden. And then all of a sudden, Biden is on his way out. And now, this article is from just a couple days ago, but I saw the headline run as a chyron on Fox News yesterday. I don't watch Fox News. Fox is not your friend. But I would much rather see you running Fox News in your restaurants than CNN or MSNBC. And I happened to be out to lunch with the family yesterday, and there was one of the, I think it's Fox and Friends. It's the panel where they've got like 6 chairs sitting around a big proscenium. Anyway, but yeah. So the headline. This is from the New York Times. Opinion: there is still a Biden scandal. There's still a Biden scandal. One of the Biden White House's greatest achievements from the perspective of its staffers, if not necessarily the country, has been to deny the press the kind of juicy leaks that were constant under Donald Trump and frequent under his predecessors. Okay, real quick, Donald, if it happens to get there, if I know, but if you happen to talk to the Donald, when you're reelected, God, please God, when Donald Trump's reelected, there's the first thing you want to, that we all want you to do, right? Fire everybody. Everybody, even if you like them. Fucking fire everybody. There's a great moment in the conversation between Trump and Elon last night where Trump brought up the way that Elon bought Twitter and fired, like, I've seen some reports that say he fired some like 90% of the staff at Twitter. And and now X is working just fine. And Trump joked, I ought to bring you into the administration. You could just start firing people. You're better at throwing people out than I am. And I'm sitting here just like, please God, please yes. Oh. And Pitt Danny says, let the ones you like reapply. Yeah, there's two things I'd love to see as soon as Donald Trump gets into office. First, you fire everybody, and then you end all foreign aid, and everybody gets to reapply. Right? Foreign countries didn't apply for foreign aid. Previous administrations put it in place as part of various diplomatic agreements, negotiations. End all foreign aid, fire everybody. Boom. That solves 90% of America's money problems right there. So, but they mentioned here one of the greatest achievements of the Biden White House has been to deny the press the kind of juicy leaks that were constant under Donald Trump and frequent under his predecessors. Constant under Donald Trump. Yeah, of course they were, because he didn't fire everybody. Right? When Biden took office, when Obama took office, they fired everybody and put their own people in. Donald Trump came in and brought in a few people. He hired a few people to replace people who left voluntarily, retired, whatever. But he didn't fire everybody. So the near bulk of his administration was made, and his cabinets were made up of Obama appointees and Obama hires. Essentially, Donald Trump's administration was Donald Trump and a bunch of fucking Democrat spies. Donald fired everybody. But they go on to say that for that reason, and they're trying to make excuses for themselves and their failures, that basically it's amazing that the Biden administration was able to cover up his decline. Now, I'm assuming that most of you watching right now have eyes and ears, or at least one or the other, right? I mean, being hard of hearing myself, I won't discount the idea that there are some deaf people out there watching my subtitles and some blind people out there listening to my dulcetory tones. But the idea that the press was unaware of Biden's decline and reported that repeatedly that he was not declining. The idea that they didn't see it, that they didn't see the many, many times he fell up the stairs trying to get onto Air Force One, the times he fell off his bike, right? The times he shat his pants meeting foreign dignitaries, the times he fell asleep, the fact that he hasn't had a meeting of his cabinet since October of last year, the fact that he can't complete sentences, he mumbles, he's falling the fuck apart. The man is already dead. So this idea that the White House cleverly hid that from them is insane. It's insult. This is what they think of you. This is what they think of the people and the voters. And it turns out that they're right about half of America. About half the country is so either stupid, illiterate, or just not paying attention that they'll believe that the media did not know that Joe Biden was basically 5 years into a 3-year stint of dementia. Right? Back in 2020, when we were talking, Joe wasn't quite yet an octogenarian, but he was damn close. He was 79 then, 78 or 79, 79. And we kept hearing Republicans criticize Joe Biden back then, suggesting, well, we see all the signs, his funny gait, his clawed hand motions, the way he speaks, the way he drops syllables, the way it's obvious these are symptoms of early onset dementia. And I'm sitting here in my studio screaming at the microphone, It's not early onset dementia when you're 80. Early onset is 65, maybe 70. But 80? I'm sorry, my man. That's just dementia. Right, when you're getting around 80 and up, not having some form of mental decline is the exception, not the rule. That Donald Trump remains as intelligent and sharp and cogent as he does at his age. And don't get me wrong, I'm not real happy about Donald Trump being as old as he is and running for office again. But given the alternatives, he is the clear choice, obviously. But to the degree that he is still very sharp and articulate and intelligent, he is an outlier. He's at the far right side of the bell curve. So, those are some of the things you need to understand about the narrative that's being spun around these conversations. And that's got me about 20 minutes over. So, guys, I'm going to go ahead. I feel like this is a little abrupt, but I am going to go ahead and put a pin in it right there. Thanks for watching this morning. And guys, like, share, and subscribe. Let's help me build this channel up. Help me grow this channel and get this voice further out. We love you. Thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow. Okay, real quick. I've got a handful more viewers than usual on YouTube. I don't see anybody watching from X right now. Wait. Sergeant Major, Dad's on X. So if you're watching on YouTube, go follow us on Rumble and X. If you're watching us on Rumble, X, and YouTube, and I'll tell you the truth, I'm seeing a few more people on YouTube than usual, and quite a few more people on Rumble than usual. And I ain't gonna lie, the temptation is, because there are so many more viewers right now than usual at this time, the temptation is to hang around and keep talking to you guys and hopefully build those numbers up. But I do need to go spend some time with the family. This show starts at 07:30 Eastern Standard Time every weekday morning, Monday through Friday. And on Fridays, we do Firearms Friday, where we cover defensive gun use stories. Yeah, see, just coming back on for a minute, I've already picked up a handful more viewers on Rumble. That's awesome. So try to be here at the beginning of the show, 07:30, and I will try to keep it to a half an hour. Have your cup of coffee, and that's what we're here for. We're here to have a cup of coffee, get our day started, right? So thanks for watching this morning. Again, we love you, and we will see you tomorrow.